Today, let's talk about the absolutely wild story of how a tiny virtual item in the video game Diablo II became a real, working currency for millions of people, and then how the whole thing was brought crashing down by counterfeiters. And get this, the game's designers, Blizzard, they never planned for this to happen. Not at all. This was a completely organic creation, a sort of shadow economy that popped up because millions of players were all trying to solve the same basic problem. And that right there, that's the heart of our story. You have this player-made economy built completely on trust and usefulness, and it was brought to its knees by cheating. This is a story about money, trust, and total collapse, all compressed into just 3 short years. So to really understand why this new currency had to be born, we first have to look at why the official one was, well, completely and utterly broken. The game's official money, gold, yeah, for any serious player, it was basically useless. You'd fill up your entire stash with it almost instantly. You'd lose a chunk of it every time you died. And honestly, there was nothing truly valuable to even buy with it. Players needed a way to trade items that were worth hundreds, sometimes thousands of hours of gameplay. And gold just wasn't up to the task. So with no working currency, players were thrown back into the economic Stone Age. Just simple bartering. And barter has this huge classic problem called the double coincidence of wants. It means you had to find someone who not only had the exact thing you were looking for, but who also wanted the exact thing you were offering. In a game with thousands of items, this was just agonizing. It was so slow and inefficient. The community knew they needed a better way. Their first shot at a real currency was an item called a perfect skull. And it kind of worked, but only like pennies or small change. It was good for little everyday trades. But you can't buy a car with a bucket of pennies, right? For the really big ticket items, you'd need a ridiculous number of skulls, which just wasn't practical for anyone. And that's when the community, with no leader and no grand plan, just sort of naturally settled on a really unlikely solution. This small, unique ring called the Stone of Jordan. So why this one ring? Well, the Stone of Jordan, or SoJ as everyone called it, accidentally had the 4 key ingredients of good money. 1, everybody wanted it. 2, it was incredibly rare. 3, it was small, so you could carry a bunch of them. And 4, its supply was naturally limited. It just happened to be the perfect thing to use as currency. And what's so fascinating is that this wasn't just some random fluke. This exact behavior was predicted more than a century ago by an economist named Carl Menger. Players just intuitively drifted towards the SoJ because it was the most saleable item. They knew that no matter what, they could always find someone else who would accept it in a trade. And you can see here just how real this economy became. By late 2001, the entire high-end market was priced in SoJs. A Storm shield? That'll be 6 SoJs. That legendary Windforce bow? It could run you up to 40. This wasn't just bartering anymore. This was a stable, functioning monetary system. But this is where it all starts to go wrong. The very things that made the Stone of Jordan the perfect currency also made it the perfect target for people who wanted to cheat the system. And let's be really clear about this. Using glitches to duplicate a Stone of Jordan, that wasn't just cheating in a game. In economic terms, it was counterfeiting. It was flooding the market with fake money. And in doing so, it was destroying the value of the rings that real players had spent hundreds of hours to find. And the collapse happened so fast. It was scary. You can see on the timeline, in late 2001, everything is stable. Then, by the middle of 2002, a massive duplication exploit gets discovered. And by August, boom. The market is in freefall, hyperinflation kicks in, and trust in the currency just evaporates. And once the trust is gone, the whole thing falls apart. To really see what that looks like, let's take one specific item. So back when the economy was stable, a popular shield called a storm shield would cost you about 6 stones of Jordan, a fair price for a good item. After the mass duplication hit, that same exact shield was now selling for 20 SoJs. That is the textbook definition of hyperinflation. Your money, your hard-earned SoJs, was suddenly worth a tiny fraction of what it used to be. So the economy is on fire, right? And eventually, the game's developers, Blizzard, realized they had to step in. And to their credit, they came up with a really clever plan to try and fix the economy they never even meant to create. Their strategy was basically what economists call a currency burn. The idea was to get players to sell a massive number of SoJs to the in-game shops, which would permanently delete them from the game. And as a reward for doing this, a super powerful boss would spawn, who dropped an incredible new item.
The goal was to get players to voluntarily destroy all the excess counterfeit currency.
But here is the beautiful, tragic, ironic failure of the whole thing. The reward for burning the SoJs, this new charm, was so powerful that it created a brand new, massive demand for SoJs, not as money, but as keys to summon the boss. The plan to drain the swamp of counterfeit rings actually gave the counterfeiters a reason to start pumping in even more.
At this point, it was over. The Stone of Jordan was dead as a currency, but the player economy is a stubborn thing, and it adapted. It moved on to using other rare items called high runes as the new standard, and eventually, the most serious traders just moved their entire economy off the game itself and onto an external website that had its own currency. So you might be thinking, okay, cool story about a video game, but why does this matter? Well, it matters because this entire saga became this perfect little self-contained economic experiment that real-world academic economists found absolutely fascinating. And here's the really key takeaway. In all of human history, the evolution of money, from bartering sticks and stones to a real currency to a total collapse, that takes thousands of years. In Diablo II, economists got to watch that entire life cycle play out from start to finish in just 3 years. It was a perfect, fast-forwarded case study of how money is born and how it dies.
So, after the rise, the fall, the counterfeiting, the chaos, what's the one big lesson we can pull from this whole digital dollars saga?
It's this, and it's so simple but so profound. The SoJ wasn't money because Blizzard said it was. In fact, they said it wasn't. It was money because millions of people just collectively agreed to trust it. At the end of the day, money is just a social agreement. It's a shared belief in value.
And it stopped being money the exact moment that trust was shattered. The hyperinflation from all the counterfeiting broke that collective belief in the ring's value. And once that belief was gone, so was the money. It was just a ring again. It just goes to show you that any currency, whether it's digital pixels or a dollar bill, is only as strong as the trust we all decide to place in it.